A rare Critical Role non-sellout, a new D&D campaign setting, and plenty of Pathfinder news.
Gobble, 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 Grant. Yum, yum, yum.
Welcome to Tabletop Tuesday, our first rundown of the week. Today we're talking about the new Critical Role live show, some new Kickstarters, and a bunch of Pathfinder tidbits. Remember, if you like these kinds of videos, be sure to like and subscribe so we can keep making them. Now, on to the news.
Show me what you got!
Critical Role had what we believe to be its first ever non-sellout of a live show, as its Candela Obscura live show over the weekend still had tickets available right up to the start of the show. That's not a knock on the quality of Candela Obscura or its live show or anything like that, and we will note that the live show itself received rave reviews from the who's who of the LA TTRPG scene. But, unlike other live Critical Role shows, it seems like the relatively limited ticket window, they announced the show only a few weeks ago, and the, of course, low profile of Candela Obscura itself contributed to the live show's rather muted sales. It's another sign of the limits of the Critical Role brand. While folks seem happy to support the flagship show, the Critical Role name isn't enough to guarantee a sellout for its other programs.
Not yet, at least.
Foundry Virtual Tabletop has announced Ember, a new role-playing campaign and setting with built-in functionality to its VTT service. The campaign setting consists of a massive hex crawl map with over 25,000 individually explorable hexes and exploration mechanics designed specifically for a digital game experience, and more specifically, a digital game experience built within Foundry itself. It appears that this is a 5e system. Some of the designers for this game refer to it as being a Dungeons & Dragons setting, so we're assuming it's made for 5e, that's been optimized for VTT use with added exploration features that are custom made for Foundry. Now, a Kickstarter will launch later this year, and we are very excited to see more of it.
I love it!
Free League has announced its latest Kickstarter, this time expanding its Blade Runner role-playing game. Replicant Rebellion is a new expansion that recruits players to join the Replicant Underground, with rules for running their own underground crew. Keep in mind that the core game focused on playing as cops looking to, among other things, keep fugitive replicants in check, so the new expansion kind of flips the switch on that a bit and, changes things up so you can play as a replicant on the run instead of a cop chasing them down. The Kickstarter will fund the Replicant Rebellion sourcebook and a new asset pack, and the Kickstarter should be live by the time this video goes live.
Lies, do you hear me?
In Disney Lorcana news, the popular card game has experienced its first shock to the meta that's dominated the game basically since launch. A new deck specifically meant to counter the popular Ruby Amethyst deck that basically dominates the meta just appeared on the scene and was piloted by Joshua Paltray to victory in the first ever Disney Lorcana Challenge, which is kind of like a regional event. Without diving too deeply into Disney Lorcana's metagame, the deck basically uses cards with effects that trigger upon either banishment or otherwise leaving the field of play, which specifically counters the control and banishment focused decks prominent in the meta. It'll be really interesting to see if this means we're finally getting a third dominant meta deck. There's currently only 2 in Disney Lorcana, and whether things will finally get out of the kind of funk it's been in since the game launched a year ago.
Okay, well, good luck.
Paizo has announced a new Pathfinder rulebook, the Pathfinder NPC Core. The announcement came during PaizoCon over the weekend, and this book will essentially be a bestiary, but for, NPCs. There are all sorts of NPCs in this book, ranging from the villains and thieves that you would expect to normal folks like simple fishermen and other people players might encounter during a campaign. This is essentially a Pathfinder 2 remake version of the NPC Codex from back in the day, which honestly, low-key was one of my most used Pathfinder rulebooks. And speaking of big Pathfinder news, Paizo confirmed, and I apologize for what I'm sure is going to be awful pronunciation here, that Achekek The praying mantis god of the assassins, which is a really cool thing within Pathfinder lore, is the god responsible for killing Gorum in its big War of the Immortals event. This praying mantis god, whose name I'm not going to butcher a second time, is supposedly barred from killing gods. That's in Pathfinder lore. So it'll be interesting to see how he overrides that so that, you know, he can assassinate the god of war.
Death can have me when it earns me.
Honestly, this is the biggest meta event ever for Pathfinder, and it kicks off later this summer, and we will have lots more details to share, basically, as soon as we get our hands on those books.
Come on, give me it. Give me it.
And finally, in somewhat surprising news, a recent post on Reddit claims that Hasbro CEO Chris Cox's home Dungeons & Dragons game is set in Kara-Tor. Last week, a Reddit user claimed that he had met with Cox as part of a small investor meeting. Hasbro has those periodically, and that he asked about the prospect of more Forgotten Realms products in the future, because, you know, we haven't gotten enough Forgotten Realms products lately. Cox responded that he was actually playing in a campaign set in Kara-Tor, which is, you know, the kind of equivalent to Asia in the Forgotten Realms. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And that he'd personally like to see the region get explored further. Now, of course, Kara-Tor was part of the infamous Oriental Adventures rulebook released in the 1980s that featured countless reductive tropes based on various Asian cultures and has basically been totally written off by modern Wizards of the Coast. And while Kara-Tor is occasionally still referenced in D&D source books, it frankly seems like it would be the last place that Wizards of the Coast would want to visit, given the issues that would likely surround even trying to update and modernize that setting and basically separate it from a lot of really cringeworthy posts that even Ed Greenwood, the creator of the Forgotten Realms, has kind of spoken out about and said, yeah, there are some misses in that. Now, we'll note that we've reached out to Hasbro to confirm the authenticity of the story. It did come from Reddit after all, and we'll update should we hear back. We'll post a comment, and we probably will do another video about it. So take that last story with a grain of salt, but, you know, the post seems to be real, if you believe Reddit. Anyways, that's all the news stories that we have for you today. Let us know what your favorite one was in the comment section below, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons.